Hey everybody and welcome to Hearts of Iron 4 Death or Dishonor. No mods this time except for all the visual stuff that I usually use. You can get a link for that in the description of the video as always, but I come back to that in a little bit. So I'm here with Scott. How you doing, Scott?
Very good today. How are you?
I haven't asked you that so far, right? Not at all.
No.
Okay. So for everybody watching the video, we are streaming live currently. If you've missed the stream, you should follow me on Twitter, really. Then you actually get a notification about the stream. I just checked that everything went fine. I had to do it myself. But yeah, it's working. It's working. So you can catch me on Twitter, and it will tell you when I'm going live on YouTube, on Twitch, and on a Mixer. Whatever you prefer, I'm there. Alright, so we're gonna do a let's play how to play beginners noob to expert tutorial. Still have to pick a name for the series though, that's too long.
What's wrong with noob to expert? Come on.
Yeah, the people don't usually search for noob unless they want, funny fails, and I hope we don't get into that category too soon.
Hello.
Yeah, I know.
How are you?
All right.
Never played.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so let's start this off by just saying we are on the main screen of the game. The only thing you've skipped is basically setting up the multiplayer game. So we've selected the 1936 tutorials, scenarios, so we can start from the very beginning and don't need to work with half of the wars already being worked on. So what do you see here? What is important? Well, there's interesting countries that just brings you back to the country selection. Don't want to do that. Activate observer mode. Well, allows you to spectate and look into what every country is doing, but you can't participate, so we're not going to do that either. On top you have, date and time, change scenario. We don't want to do that. You have the default map mode, which we're looking at. You can switch that to players map mode and see what countries players have chosen. Doesn't really matter. I mean, usually you would be in TeamSpeak or Discord or Skype or whatever, Mumble, and talk to each other what everybody wants to do in a multiplayer game. If you play single player, this is pretty easy. Just, pick your country and go start. I picked the German Reich. Gives me a few more options and actually allows me to explain quite a bit of the gameplay. And, it is the major nation of World War II because they started it and they lost it. And Scott picked Italy because that's very close by and gives him most of the options as well without being too difficult. We can pick other nations, of course. If you start out, I wouldn't recommend France or the UK because you have colonies pretty much everywhere in the world. If I go UK, you can see that. If I go France, that's all of this. I also wouldn't pick the US of A. Just because you run all kinds of situational issues because of the sleeping giant mentality they have, but we come back to that during the whole explanation of the game. So I'm gonna go German Reich again. What else do we have? You have some information at the top right about your country, shows you your political setup and what extra stats you have. I'm not gonna go into that right here. You see that in the game afterwards itself, and we can go through it there. On the bottom right, if you're hosting the game, or if you're going single player, you have some options for the difficulty. We're going to go recruit this time, which gives you bonus on production efficiency and research time, political power gain, lack of resources penalty. I'm going to explain those terms while we're in the game. Just for now, know that actually makes it easier. That's why it's recruit. You can set difficulties for the major nations. I'm not going to go into that. We just leave them on default. Reset all, close that thing. There's an Ironman mode. If you pick that, in multiplayer you can't. You only have one save game. If you lose, if you mess up, you can't go back. So that's something because that allows you all the Steam achievements. Otherwise, you are able to save wherever you want and go back to whatever save game you want. So multiplayer, we have to do it ourselves. Historical AI focus, just make sure that the AI players, like UK, France, Spain, all of those USSR, they will try to stay as true through the timeline as possible, and that makes them a little bit predictable. In a multiplayer game you wouldn't really have predictability if all of the major nations are picked by players, but we're gonna leave it on just for explaining things. Okay, I'm gonna hit start here. I'm gonna jump right in. Soon. Ish.
Okay.
Alright, here we are, mostly. Let me just set up something. Where are we? There you go.
Connected.
Forgot to start my timer. So, now it's running. That's better. Alright, multiplayer lobby, don't need to worry about that. I just press start and we're in the game. Currently, nothing's happening. The timer in the bottom and in the top right is stopped. And that's how you start out. Alright, so let's start on the very top. We have already discussed what country you should pick and you should not pick. So now let's talk a little bit about the screen layout. I do have some mods running that improve visibility of some things, like the buttons in the top left are colored and the buttons in the bottom right are colored. That's a mod. You usually have them all in gray, you know, military style. I have non-reflective water, so it doesn't glare in your face all the time. But that's pretty much it. There's some icons that are improved, like victory points are more visible. You don't know what victory points are, we come to that later, so not even worth talking about it. If you want to see what mods I use, it's in the description of the video, so just scroll down there and you get a link to the Steam Workshop collection that I've set up, and you can just subscribe to all of them, or, you know, leave it. Description of the individual mods, obviously, is in the mods on the workshop. Alright, how are you feeling down there in Italy? Everything fine?
Yeah.
You
Got a
look
little
pretty...
gum on my shoe, but that's about it.
Pretty Italian to me. Alright. Okay, let's start and see what we can see here. The most important thing throughout the whole game is the very top of the screen, the top bar, the top overlay, if you will. And there's a little one in the bottom right as well, which becomes important in a couple minutes. Let's start on the very tippy-toppy left. On the top left you should see your flag.
Yep.
Right? If you click on that, you open your political screen, which shows you your leader. If you hover over the leader, it gives you the name and what type of person he is. So for me it says, obviously, Adolf Hitler, dictator. And it gives me an extra stat, political power gain plus 25%. Some of them have that, some of them don't. So you might be a king from a third world country and that guy actually gets minus 25% on resource income because he spends all of the stuff for personal gain. Might be a thing. I'm not going to go too much into this screen right now. There's a pie chart in the middle that tells you what party is your ruling party currently, that decides your ideology. It says it to the left. It says here, I'm fascist. There are no elections held. Should say the same for you.
Yep.
Very good. Well, fascist is never really good, but for the purpose of this tutorial it is. Alright, so we're going to leave that screen. Above that screen, next to the flag, there are 7 buttons? Yeah, it's 7 buttons. And on top of that, there's some numbers. We go through the buttons first. So the blue one here, the left one, is a research. When you click on that, how many areas are flashing to you? I have 4.
I have 4.
Good. Some countries start out with as little as 2, I believe, and you can go up to 6. Each of these is a research line, so you're going to use your scientists to research stuff throughout the game. And, well, we're going to start here right away. Click on, well, one of the empty ones, so it doesn't really matter which one.
Yep.
And it should bring you to the first screen. Weapons, equipment, mobile infantry, and so on and so on.
Correct.
First thing you see on top is a timeline. If you see on the very top right, we are at 12 AM, 1st of January 1936. Right?
Yep.
So the first timeline item here is 1918. So all of that can be researched without any issues. 1936, all of that can be researched. If you go to 1938, you're getting penalties because you're too far ahead in the time. So you can't just go in here and speed research 1946 technology. That's just not going to work. That's a balancing aspect of the game. So what am I going to do first? Well, let me explain how research works. You have, on the top, you have green buttons, you have blue buttons, you have red buttons, and you have orangey kind of buttons, right?
Yeah.
That's good. So green is all your army stuff, blue is your navy, red is your air force, and then you have, well, your infrastructure and engineering stuff. Let's go to the very right, to industry. That's the first one you want to start out with, usually.
Right.
So timeline here starts in 1936 and it's going top down rather than left to right, but that's the only real difference. And we currently have a couple of things we can do here. There's a column that says production. And the first item here is basic machine tools. Hey Geek Gamer, welcome to the stream. Sit back, relax, enjoy, get your chips. We're doing a tutorial today. So that's the first one you want to do. Definitely, because basic machine tools, once you click on it, it says it will research for me in 141 days.
Same here.
If you hover over that, it will tell you it's a basic cost of 150 days. You save 1 day, because we're already 1 day in the game technically. Then we have limited exports set up, which gives you research bonus of -1%, and we have recruit difficulty, which is another -5%. So we're dropping down 9 days in total.
Nice.
And below it gives you a little text of what this does. It's not really that important. And then you have global stats. Production efficiency cap plus 10%. Now what is that? I'm gonna tell you that once we get there. Currently, the only important thing is that we hit research here. Brings you back to the main map, right?
Right.
Click the next free one, and then we're gonna go, that will open up at the same screen.
Yep.
If the research actually finished, it will open on that screen where that research was done. So if production is done, that item that we just pressed, basic machine tools, it will go back to this screen. So if you've done aircraft, it will go back to the aircraft screen. Currently, since it's just an empty one, it will go back to the last one we opened. That's a little thing in the game. It's quite nice. So if you ever wonder, what did I just finish? I just clicked a button. Well, it must have been somewhere on the screen that you're on now. Otherwise, it wouldn't have brought you there. So we're gonna go construction 1, which is the little steel support beam there. And it gives you construction speed and factory repair speed of plus 10%. That's great. So we can produce factories faster. Why? We're getting to that. Okay, we have 2 more. I'm gonna go to engineering, which is the button left of the industry button that we just had open.
Yep.
And I'm gonna go electronic engineering, the top one. Electronic mechanical engineering, which gives you a research time reduction of 2%.
Yep.
Which is great. You want to get those as fast as possible, because, you know, the sooner you get the research reduction, for longer you will have it in effect. Right? So,
Yep.
It will, well, accumulate, basically. That leaves 1, and now I'm gonna go back to probably infantry, which is the top left button.
Support weapons?
What? Support weapons?
Support weapons, maybe?
We might, but I'm just gonna go, you know, weapons and equipment, the very first one I have there. Says for me MG08 and leichter Minenwerfer, which is the light, well, mine thrower technically. Yeah, well, the first one, whatever that is, just, you know, you will always want to stay up to date on those as best as you can, because the stats you get there, if you're back on your research screen where you have your 4 research lines, you can hover over all the stuff you've picked, and we'll tell you again what bonus you get. So for me, the last one I picked is infantry, defense +5, and breakthrough +5, and cavalry, and all the stuff.
Yep, that's the same for me.
It might be just
7
called a little
bonuses.
differently because you're a different country. And you're a
Right.
major country, you have your own stuff in there. Geek Gamer, no, you cannot join this server. Not this time. I'm going to do a, you know, subscriber and friends stream where we do a massive multiplayer at some stage. Not today though, but probably as soon as next weekend. I don't know yet. We'll see. Alright. What else do we have on this research screen? On the top below where it says research, you have this little icon of the lab codes guys.
You're right.
And next to that you have 2 icons and a percentage, right?
Yes.
So the first icon is limited technology bonus will be listed here, and the other one is research time, general reduction. So some things you can do in this game will give you a bonus to a certain technology, and we get to that once we have one of those items. They will be listed in the left one, so you can actually have a look there and say, okay, what could I do really quickly, and then just go from there. And I have -6% here. You should pretty much have the same for the general research reduction. That will go to -8 as soon as we have that electronic mechanical engineering research with the extra 2%.
Nice.
Good, that's the research. Well, let's go on. Let's do some construction. Why not? Construction is that little crane thing, the orange button, the 4th from the left.
Yep.
Because you always want to construct. Now, let's zoom a little in on your country there, so we can start. What do we see in construction? On the top left, it tells you have this and that many factories. There should be 2 numbers there. Alright. And then next to it, it says from trade and owned. Currently, owned should be the same as the number after the slash, because you're usually not trading at the start of the game.
Right.
So that's the maximum amount of factories you have. When you assign a project for factories to do, a maximum of 15 factories will join that project. That's the first stat you need to keep in mind, but you will see that in a second. So what are we going to do first? On the very right side of that panel, you have all the things you can construct. There's state buildings, that's the very top box. There is shared buildings, there's province buildings, and then there's a little conversion thing. So what's the difference between all of those? For the state buildings, they just improve things overall in a state. Now what is a state? We'll come to that a little later, but if you click somewhere on your territory, you will get an outline of a state, with a little outline in that state, and that is a province. That's just the very quick rundown on that.
Okay.
Good, let's go back into construction, and we want to do some stuff. I think I'm gonna start doing some civilian factories probably, although I think I'm gonna do military factories here. That is shared buildings, is military factories, civilian factories, naval dockyards, and all that stuff. So what is a shared building? A shared building goes for the whole state, but the state may have like 6 slots for shared buildings. So you can put 3 military factories and 3 civilian factories in there. Or you can put, if it's at the coast, you can put a dockyard in there and 5 factories, or something like that. So there's always a cap as to how much you can put in there. And if you click on one of those, let's say you pick civilian factory here or military factory, you will see that the states light up. Everything in blue is fully built up, you cannot put anything in there anymore. And everything in green can be built up. So I have some that have 3 of 4, 11 of 12, 4 of 6, and it always has a little percentage underneath. I can tell you what that is in a second. So if I have 3 or 4, that means I can put 1 more building in there, right? Makes sense. If you hover over it, it actually tells you. Mecklenburg has used 3 out of 4 building slots, there's 3 military factories in here, for example. The different hues of green basically tell you what kind of buildings are in there, I believe. So if it's a dark one, then you don't really have many of that type in there. So if I click military factories and I only have dark areas, dark green areas, then there's no military factory in there. Maybe civilians, maybe dockyards, maybe refineries or something like that. And if it lights up in light green, then I already have a number of that type in there. That's another thing that's good to know if you want to distribute yourself a little bit. Why would you want to do that? Well, also we come to that later when we get into the air war and bombing. Okay, so how do we start this off? I guess we just start building stuff, and I would recommend at the start of the game to build some civilian factories, because civilian factories, as I just said, are used for building stuff. So the more you have, the more you can build at the same time, right?
Right.
Now, you have a percentage under every of these little icons that show you how much more you can build. The higher the percentage, the faster it gets done. So, as a general rule of thumb, anything below 60% I wouldn't waste my time on. I would rather build that up to 80% or 90% and then start building there. So I'm gonna go and drop some, I think in my case actually military factories. Oh, let's do some civilian first. When you hover over one of those states, it actually tells you in the tooltip, click to build, shift click to build the maximum amount, and control click to build and place at the beginning of the queue. So if you just click, it will build 1, let's say, civilian factory. If you have 6 empty slots and you shift click, it will build all of those 6, it will just queue them up. And if you control click, well, once you have some buildings queued up, you will get a queue. So if you control click, it will move that to the very top of the list as well. So if you have something that needs to be done right now, you control click. That's a very nice mechanic. I think they added that recently, because I don't know that control click was in there from the very beginning. I see that for the first time, actually. That's cool. Okay, I'm just going to shift click on everything that says 80% here. That's not that much. It will give you a little blue overlay to say that this is maximum amount and you can't do any more. There's more. It will give you a yellow overlay to show you that you are building, but you're not yet at max. So just, queue up, let's say, 6, 7, 8 of those civilian factories. That might be a good start. That's 8. And I'm also gonna queue up some militaries if I still have good territory. Which I don't. Alright. Good, then it's time to build some infrastructure here. We want that. If you click on the infrastructure icon, that's the railroads in the top.
Railroads at the top. Okay.
Mm-hmm. We'll say if you hover over it, it will actually give you construction costs and all of that. It's not really that much to worry. It will give you the idea if you're more experienced. Should I do this or should I rather do 2 of something else because it's the same construction cost and that's is basically the same time it needs to be constructed. But right now, just don't worry about it. We get to that later probably. So now if you click on railroads or infrastructure, it will actually tell you 6 out of 10, 4 out of 10, 2 out of 10. That's how good you are in infrastructure currently. So everything that says 8 out of 10 would have given you the 80% plus, for example. So you want to have that as high as possible for more than one reason. I'm just gonna improve some of these up to 8. So where I already have 7, I'm gonna increase all of those by just clicking on them once, and that will bring them up to 80%, and that will give me a huge construction speed increase later. I think that's okay for now. I do want that. And for no apparent reason, I want the whole Polish border to be at least 80%. How? Why would I do that? Well, I'll show you in a second. Alright. So that's queued up. You should have a pretty long queue now. Some civilian factories on the top, and then some railroads, some infrastructure at the bottom, probably.
Yes.
Now, if you look at one of those entries, you see first of all this the state it's produced in. Then you see the icon of what you're actually producing. It tells you with a little number how many you are producing. So if it's 1, 3, 4, whatever. Then it tells you how many factories are assigned. So the first one should say 15 out of 15. Which it does for me, and the next one just says 1 out of 15 because then I'm out of factories. And there is a little green bar below that that's currently just all black because we haven't run any time yet in the game, so no progress has been done. And that will tell you if you hover over it, next complete 1 AM 19th of March 36. So this will take 3 months to build one factory for me currently. Also will give you all the modifiers. State infrastructure is times 1.8, limited exports is +5, whatever that is, we come to that later.
Okay.
Alright, so let's close the construction tab and get back to the map. Let's do something else. One of the main buttons you will usually use is your military production, which is the green button in that row of buttons there with the little wrench at the hand.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff in there usually from the get-go. Well, how are we gonna do this? What do you really need? Well, I give you the quick rundown of what we're going to do currently, and we're gonna go back to this later in detail. What you usually need? You should have a row of infantry equipment.
I have 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5 what?
Infantry equipment, factories.
Alright. Yeah, more. Just max that out to maximum of 15 in that row.
Okay.
You probably don't have enough, but that doesn't matter right now. There's a lot of other stuff in there, like support equipment, towed artillery, light tanks, motorized, aircraft, and then we come to all the blue stuff, which is the ships. So currently, what we really need is infantry equipment, support equipment, and probably whatever else you have in there is okay. Because I don't know on the top of my head what your army composition is. So that should be good for now. And at the moment, it's just important that we're actually using these. On the top, it says there are military factories and naval dockyards. And when it says, for me, military factories 25 out of 40, that means that I'm not using 15, which is a waste of military space. You should always use all of your factories, no matter what you're doing. Because otherwise it's just a waste. The more you use, the faster stuff gets produced. The faster it gets produced, the more you can accumulate, the more it's put in storage for when you need it. So, why not? What am I gonna do? I'm gonna do and produce all of the tanks, probably, and all of the motorized. Good. That's good for me. For you, it's definitely infantry equipment and probably support equipment and maybe towed artillery if you have it in there. Alright.
What do I have here? I have infantry, support, light tank, motorized, and close air.
Alright, so you don't have any towed artillery or anything like that. Alright, that's okay. That's fine. For now, leave it as it is. If you have unused military factories, distribute them. Probably just put them all in infantry equipment. More guns is always good, because without guns, nobody fights. Not even tanks.
I am maxed on everything.
Good. Perfect. Do you have navy below that? Some of the blue ones?
Yes, I do. I have...
All right.
two battleships,
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what that, light cruiser,
Okay.
destroyer, and submarine.
Let's make it short for now. In the top left of those pictures where it says whatever type you're producing, it usually has a number and a minus and a plus button, right?
Right.
Click minus until you had 1. Don't go to infinity, just until it reaches 1. That means the one you're currently producing will finish, and then that production line gets deleted. Because we don't need those. Not at the moment and not later. What you might need later is some convoys, but we get to that once we start working on the Navy. Don't really need it right now. Alright, that's the basic setup on how you do construction and military production. And what else have we done? Research. That's pretty much it for now.
Getting some infrastructure set up.
Yeah, that's important. But why? I'm going to tell you later. We're going to get there soon. Alright, I think that's it for this episode. The stream will definitely continue, and we're gonna go and, well, let me move my screen. Thank you. We're gonna continue on with what we're doing. So for those in the stream, don't go anywhere. For those watching the video, that's it for this episode. Don't forget to justify a subscriber goal and also blitzkrieg that like button. Follow me on Twitter if you want to catch the next live stream. I'm Scryptar, he is Scott, and you are dismissed.